Hello, we're live. Welcome to our second ever episode of the Inform Me Talking Small Business webinar hosted by me, Sophie Cross. I'm the founder and editor of Freelancing Magazine. And I'm very excited that Will Blower, Managing Director of Realised Finance, is back. He was our first ever guest and he's now agreed to be our co-host because he was so good last month. So he's going to be a permanent fixture of this webinar and he's going to be bringing his business and finance expertise as well. So I'm really excited to have him here. Thank you to everyone who's come along to watch live. Feel free to use the chat to say hi to everyone if you've got any questions as we go along. So yeah, please feel free to jump in the chat. I know a few people have been using it already. This month, we're joined by Steve Folland. He's our guest. He's an award-winning podcast host. He's a video creator and all-round freelance legend. Also, cover star of I've got loads of photos I could be grabbing from everywhere. He was our last cover star of Freelance Magazine. We celebrated the fact that his Being Freelance podcast turned 10 years old this year. So that's an insane achievement. Well done. I think, was it 333 episodes?
If you say so. It becomes a blur at this age. 10 years, yeah. It's great. Thanks for having me, though. This is nice.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for coming. So, Being Freelance podcast, Being Freelance community founder, Doing It for the Kids podcast, also a freelancer yourself. So we're going to be chatting to you and learning all your top tips for all of these different elements. I am going to let Will crack on because I think that you and I could just probably chat, and I know you quite well, and then we won't get a chance to co-host. So I'm going to pass over to Will in a sec, but I wanted to ask you quickly first.
Mm-hmm.
So you host the Being Freelance podcast on your own, but you also have the Doing It for the Kids podcast, which you host with Frankie. So do you have any tips for us in co-hosting? Because we are completely new to this, so we might be talking over each other.
Okay, yeah. So the Doing It for the Kids podcast is for self-employed parents. So it's me and Frankie Tortora. And we have done lots of live things as well as the co-hosting a recorded podcast. And on the live stuff, I would say it's quite good if you're ever co-hosting to know who's going to be, for example, saying the intro or the outro. So you've just bossed the intro, for example. But also often you end up with like live chat with like comments and questions coming in. So when we do lives, Frankie usually, keeps an eye on the camera and I keep an eye on the chat and sort of bring in comments and stuff like that. So I guess it's kind of dividing the roles and then knowing you've got a beginning, a middle and an end. So you know what you're both doing and then trying not to talk over each other.
We don't know how good we're going to be at that yet.
We can figure it out, can't we, and see how it goes.
We've done the beginning. Awesome. So yeah, over to you, Will. Have you got some questions for Steve?
Jump straight into the middle of our little story we're putting together. Obviously I've read a little bit about you before coming on, which is great. And the best thing I think to explain to the viewers just to find out a little bit about you and what it is you do in business and yourself.
So I'm a freelance podcast and video creator for businesses. So I run a business doing that. And then being freelance, I started as a podcast just because I didn't know how to be freelance. This was 10 years ago. I've been doing it on the side of a job in radio for many years, but not being full-time freelance. And then that grew into a community, and there's now a course for new freelancers and all sorts. So it's kind of like the two things run in tandem. But my actual job, as it were editing videos, making podcasts and stuff like that. But the reason I did Doing It for the Kids podcast as well is because one of the key reasons I went freelance was so that I could be there to look after my kids. They're now like at high school, but back then one of them was like 9 months old or something. So my business has grown as they have grown as well.
Oh, cool. And that must be tough to kind of balance the time between having kids and business. I know when I had this a month ago, Sophie was asking me how I balance all of my time. I'm not in a position to have kids, so I guess I've got a little bit more time than you. But how do you find having the children and being a parent at the same time?
Yeah, it can be tough. You kind of like can feel guilt, guilt that you're not working on your work, guilt that you're not with your kids or whatever. But weirdly, though, I also think if you don't have kids, there's no reason for you to stop working almost. Like you could, because when we run our own businesses, you have so many ideas, there's so many things you could do that it can fill up all your time. So you actually have to be quite strict with your boundaries, I think. And when you're a parent and there's people making you take time off as well, like with all the half terms, kids are barely ever at school. So yeah, it kind of almost forces you to have time off. So in a way, I try to see the plus side anyway, rather than all the working late nights and things like that used to happen when they were younger. These days,
so it kind of helps with the work-life balance having the kids, because it gives you that separation between here's work, here's home. Do you have an office space, or is it in the home, the office?
For most of the time, I have worked from home. I used to work from this tiny desk in our kitchen table, basically. And now the same kitchen table is in this bedroom. But in between time, I did work from a co-work space. I had a private office for a little while as well. But now he's probably just at a shop, but there's a dog here. So even though the kids have left, now that they've not left, but that they don't give us so much love these days. So we had to get a dog. So now I have to stay home to look after him.
So you've still got that work-life balance that you can go home to the dog.
Dogs are really good.
It's a great excuse. Yeah, great excuse. No, I like that. So as a kind of driving force as to why you decided to do what you did start 10 years ago, going freelance with the whole community, what was the driving force behind that? Was it having children? Was that before? Because I don't know the age of children or anything like that. So.
Yeah, so the reason to go freelance was realizing that I was talking about you. The reason to go freelance was just purely childcare, really, to look after kids. But I had been doing it on the side. So originally it was because I wanted to be more creative. And then it was because I wanted to make extra money. And then there was so much opportunity that I thought, well, maybe I don't have to go and get another job with more flexibility. I can create my own flexibility and work from home and be there for the kids or the furry kids. And so that's what I did. The community sprung up much later. I started the podcast 10 years ago, and I think the community is maybe 5-6 years old, something like that.
Feels that I think it's longer than that.
Do you want me to open the door, mate? Is that it? Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So the community I started in 2019. There you go. You're no longer a prisoner. Yeah. I can't remember.
Amazing. So, and obviously career history before that, is it something you've always been involved in? Or
what, community?
Communities or in media?
I worked in radio for about 10 to 15 years, something like that. So, which is why I was able to work in radio freelance as well as having a full-time job.
To pick up that alongside also doing that, but be able to grow your own thing. I guess similarly to how I did in accountancy, that I worked for a subcontractor at the same time whilst picking up my own clients and building that business myself. And it's a great way to get into it. No, I like that. So obviously, throughout the years, you've grown and grown and grown, and it's got to the point that you've even won some awards, I hear. So with that, can you tell us a little bit about the awards you've won or anything along the journey?
So ridiculously, excitingly, we won the British Podcast Award for the Doing It for the Kids podcast.
Wow.
So that was the best business. When was that? 2021. Of course it was 2021, because do you remember that period of lockdown where if somebody got sick, you had to stay in your house for 14 days? That happened during the ceremony. Like, I couldn't go to the ceremony where we won. So Frankie, my co-host, went with a tiny blow-up doll version of me.
I remember that.
But that was amazing that we won, especially because we're just an independent podcast. It's just the two of us who do everything ourselves. And we're up against, like The Economist or The Times.
Wow. So some big names, but you're doing your own kind of niche thing and you're able to win an award in such a big category. So that is really amazing. The Diary of a CEO, I think, came second.
Wow. Whoa.
That's big.
He's still not talking to me. And then Being Freelance has been a finalist in that same category, but hasn't won. I think Doing It for the Kids had a really great, unique feel, like particularly at that time, helping out people during that COVID time, the sense of community that podcast has, I think, really helped.
Are you still doing it for the kids at the
Yeah,
moment?
one came out today.
Oh, amazing.
So there's an episode out
I mean,
today.
I listen to it and I don't even have kids. Yeah.
Okay. We'll have to throw a link into the chat so that if it's today episode,
Yeah, absolutely, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Cool.
So what were you going to say? An episode came out today.
Yeah, it's like 20 minutes long, that podcast, and it's like a Q&A. It's like an agony aunt and uncle kind of thing, but we also get listeners' comments, so it kind of loops back into itself, which is really nice. And the community, Being Freelance community, won an IPSI award, the Association for Independent Professionals and Self-Employed, a couple of years ago. I remember
that too.
Yeah, so that was nice.
Okay, no, it's amazing. So you obviously won a few awards, and all these different awards look great because you can say you're an award-winning podcast, award-winning freelancer, which all them kind of things. In my opinion, when we were able to get to the step of award-winning accountant, it's that extra step to show you something you do is worth the value. So I'd be really intrigued to know, what do you think the quality is that you've kind of had in your business and yourself that's won you them awards? Is there a certain thing that you do that's very special and you find that's it? Or
I mean,
he's so comfortable with talking about himself and saying how amazing he is, aren't you, Steve? You love
your own trumpet. I'm intrigued. So.
The funny thing about entering awards is that it's not about the winning, and it's lovely to win, of course it is. Mm-hmm. But actually, I think if anybody sort of watching this, if you're ever tempted to enter an award, just filling in that form and like putting together your process, you must have found this with things you've entered, like it makes you reflect on what you've done. And I think when you run your own business, it's very easy just to keep moving from thing to thing to thing to thing and not reflect on all the cool things that have happened. So I think that's when we listened back to our entry for the Doing It for the Kids podcast that particular year, and we were runner up, I think, the year before as well. Like, it really makes you proud. It makes you think, actually, we've been slogging away doing this every week, and you get together maybe your listener testimonials, and you realize the difference you're making to people.
And that's when it hits home as what you're doing is good and making a difference.
Yeah, so I could do the same when I entered for the Being Freelance community kind of thing. Even though it's just something I've been doing for years, just because I like to lift other people up, cheer them on. I could put in those quotes from people who have become freelance because they've listened to the podcast, who have been supported through good times, tough times, found work through the Being Freelance community, found friends, co-mentors, all of these things. You can put it down there. So I think if you're ever entering those things, it's about finding that kind of evidence. But it's just a good feeling to enter them, whether you win or not.
I think so. They're always a great night out as well, aren't they?
Yeah, true.
I've been banging on this so much recently, about this kind of benchmark that keeps moving. And I think actually it was the end of last year. I don't know if I saw something on LinkedIn about someone saying, people start reflecting on their achievements for the year, don't they? And I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to set a timer for 10 minutes and, write down some stuff that, has gone well this year. And it was just such a helpful process, and I keep reminding people to do that now, because I just and in life in general, I just think our benchmark keeps moving. We keep looking at things we don't have and what's next, and we can forget even on a day-to-day basis what we've achieved and what we've done. And I was just going to jump into the chat because Emma Louise has, she said that she is balancing study and family life, and the dream is to work for herself. But the struggle will be who wants to trust a newly qualified bookkeeper. So I thought I might come to both of you. I mean, first, kind of as a bit of a segue, to say that even though you're a newly qualified bookkeeper, think about all of the other experience and, all of the skills that you're bringing to that. It's not just about kind of your new qualification, but I know we touched on this last time, Will, in terms of you obviously both started. Yeah. So what would your advice be for someone who, worries about that kind of struggle that people won't be able to trust kind of someone that's newly qualified?
Of course, no, it's tough. I mean, I can give it very from the heart. And what I did to show my value, I had to go out there and spend time with people, build relationships, and at times give free advice or do free work at the start to almost be like, this is what I can do. Now, it might not be always the best advice to go down that route. And how I think we spoke about, I also got clients right at the start to build my confidence was just being spread out in as many places as possible and getting involved in as much as possible. So this could look in Louise's kind of situation, that could she get involved with a local charity, a local kids club, a local as a treasury and stuff, where they're not paying for the service, so they can't expect too much as such, but you can show how much value you actually have, because if you're a qualified bookkeeper, you know what you're doing. It's just putting it onto paper and having what you've actually done. So that's where I would look to go.
Yeah, that's great advice. And that is kind of choosing yourself in that respect, isn't it? Just, like Steve, you've set up the community, you've set up the podcast, you obviously had years and years of experience in radio. But there are ways that you can go out and prove that that you can do these things and put yourself out there. But I mean, where did your first freelance clients come from? Do you remember? Do you remember
all those years ago? We used to mark on cave walls and then they'd come running. Do you know, I'm just thinking about Emma Louise as well, is that you are qualified though. Like you're a bookkeeper. So part of me kind of feels like, it's like when people say, oh, I'm an aspiring graphic designer. Just, you're a graphic designer. You're a bookkeeper. So that's kind of what I think on that. My clients, there's such a mix. I mean, so many people I speak to the Being Freelance podcast, they will say that it comes through word of mouth, people they know, referrals. And so saying what it is that you do out loud to people is one of the best ways to get your first clients. So that, that relates to Emma Louise as well as a bookkeeper. You start calling yourself a bookkeeper, you're describing yourself, you put yourself out that way. And, and she's doing it around family life as well. Like, get yourself your URL for your website. And when you're signing up for things, start putting down that professional URL instead of the other one. And people are nosy. They'll go, oh, what's this URL? And they'll be typing it in to find out, what that particular parent does. A lot of mine was through the connections that you make over the years. Admittedly, I also found some stuff online, like originally through job platforms, for example. Now, these days, those are very crowded. So I feel like I was kind of like at a good point, and they can get a bad rap. But I also think there are some good clients on those platforms who have a job right now that needs doing and are willing to pay for it. Like there's something really great about that. And it can be a nice, easy way to get some things in your portfolio, to get some stuff under your belt. And I was just testing the waters at that point. And then gradually, just by sort of showing up online and putting yourself out there and doing jobs and making all of those connections, gradually you get to know more and more people. And so eventually more and more people start to refer you. So, and I see loads of, because I'm a member of the Being Freelance community, I see loads of referrals and requests for work coming into there. So that's another good reason to join the community. Yeah, if you join a community, for example, if you're a newly qualified bookkeeper, if you join local business communities, and including online ones, and like show up and are helpful and just get to know people, you don't have to be like overly selling yourself, which can feel hard when you're new and you're really trying to land some work. But you just show up enough and people get to know you. Suddenly people want to help you as you help them.
Yeah. So did you find yourself, Steve, are you involved in any kind of like in-person networking, or is it more online that you kind of go down?
We do in-person networking as well in the Being Freelance community. So like at the end of this month, we're off to play mini golf in London.
Amazing.
Very serious golf.
Well, I actually found a proofreader for the magazine when we were playing crazy golf and I just thought it was hilarious because it was like the mini version of getting out on the course. Like we were like, we're serious business people here.
Yeah, so with the kind of in-person events, the big thing that's been for me ever since the start, and I've been going to them for 4.5, 5 years since I started the business. I found it's not just about you'll go to them and you'll be like, this person's going to be a client. I'm going to try and sign them up X amount. They should come on board. It's very much you build these relationships over time. You come out of your comfort zone. You speak to new people that you won't have met in different areas. Might even be other accountants. You'll always find a bit of advice from everyone. But it's relationship building over the time, and you never know who you might meet that might be able to provide something to you 3 or 4 years down the line. So it's about that long-term kind of commitment early on. And I imagine you've had similar experiences in your local communities as well.
Yeah, local ones, and funnily enough, one of the very first proper networking event, like proper people with proper business cards that I went to. I met, and I at the time thought I'm a video editor, I'm a video creator, I'm going to help you make videos. And the first person I met at it was somebody who made videos, and I was like, oh, for goodness sake, I was so annoyed. Oh, I've met someone doing the same thing as me. But actually, he is an insanely talented videographer, and he and I have stayed in touch and have hired each other and worked together
that's so cool.
so many times over the past 10, 11 years. So yeah, the competition isn't always the competition that you think.
Totally
it is,
agree.
that's for sure.
Yeah, totally agree.
And there's value from kind of making connections with your peers as well as the competition. But I do also advise people though that you're probably going to get more business going to a networking event for, a local networking event or your target industry than you are going to a networking event for accountants or because I feel like it can feel really safe to keep going to these spaces like for copywriters or for accountants and things like that. And you're obviously going to learn from other people about how to grow your business and possibly get referrals and things like that. But Jay's put in the chat, are there any platforms you can share for new freelance accountants to source opportunities? And I don't know. I know that there's kind of Freelancer and Fiverr and Elance and all these, and it would probably be worth a Google search. But I would say that, I'll ask your advice next, but, joining local Facebook groups, business Facebook groups and places like that would probably be a better place to kind of start putting yourself out there as an accountant, or somewhere like the Being Freelance community where you've got lots of small business people kind of looking for that might be looking for that advice. I mean, also to say that do go to these communities with the intention of kind of being part of the community and helping other people and learning. It's not kind of reeks of desperation if you kind of rock up there and just start to kind of hard sell yourself. But yeah, I think that would probably be more powerful than looking at these bigger platforms. But do you have any, Will? Do you know any kind of platforms that you can source opportunities from, or where would you advise?
Yeah, so platforms as such, I think accountancy as an industry is very much it's relationship based. And I think as soon as you start to transact online or somewhere like Fiverr, it's always for a quick and as cheap as possible service, which if you really want good quality accountancy and to provide that, you're not going to be able to put your services on there for that industry as such. Now, I've seen graphic design and stuff, and you can get a good job done very quickly on there. But I just think for accountancy, it's very much relationship. So from there, I think it is important to put yourself in as many kind of local places as possible. You mentioned the specialist events such as a construction industry. So if you want to be an accountant that deals with construction clients, I know locally in Peterborough here, we have construction specialist events where you could go in. If you are the one for your sector that knows everything about it, you're going to be amazing in there. So I think there's that. I know that Xero and QuickBooks and the different accounting softwares, they offer directories where you can put your details on there. It's funny because I was actually updating our card details the other day, boring story, change your bank and stuff. But because of that, I checked our directory. We haven't had a single kind of view on the listing at all. So that's why I always feel, to me, it's about putting the legwork in for a relationship rather than just being listed online and hoping stuff comes as such.
Yeah, for sure. And Steve, have you got advice either about kind of platforms or places to show up regularly, or maybe about how tips for kind of being part of a community and work might come from that, but how does that happen?
I think it's like a hybrid of lots of different things, isn't it? The central thing of it is meeting lots of different people and connecting with lots of different people, and I think it's good advice to say about the local opportunities, because in a world where we can just go online and be hired and work with anybody in the world or anybody in the country, then we feel like that's what we should be doing, when in fact everywhere where we live, even in the smallest places, that we're surrounded by like businesses and industrial parks and business parks that you might not even realize when you're driving around, but they're there. And getting in amongst those, even sending off, ideally going to events where you'll end up bumping into those people, but you can send emails or try to connect with these people on something like LinkedIn or, so that you start to build up a relationship before you send a cold email. It's more like a warm email. Or going to local co-work spaces, for example, and meeting businesses who are based there. More and more bigger businesses are in co-work spaces, I have found, because they've sort of fragmented their teams. They don't have a one office now. Maybe they've got like a hub within a co-work space. It's amazing who you can find in those sort of places as well. And
often they host their own networking events as well, don't they?
They do here as well. Yeah, it's really common.
Even if you're not part of the co-work space, because they want to showcase the space to people and invite their members and invite people from outside.
And you can speak to them to get involved as well. I mean, our local one, which is just behind us here, I mentor with them for small businesses and specifically on new accountants that are looking to register as become an accountant themselves and work for themselves. So even that has led to opportunities that they then pass clients that they can't look after to us. So I think it's always just about asking the questions, seeing who you know and getting involved and just being involved in the communities.
Yeah, you might even, if they're putting on events, eventually feel confident to put yourself forward as a speaker, giving tips for small businesses or whatever it might be about the speciality that you have. I met at the co-work space I was in, there was like a local agency was putting on like events for local creatives. That was kind of like their idea to try and grow their network. I met them and started giving them advice about podcasts. And now, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years later, I still make their podcast. So eventually, it was maybe about 2 years after we first met that they eventually decided to start a podcast, but they decided to come to me, and all I'd done was meet and eat their biscuits. So it's it's cool how you can do that. I think SEO as well, like local SEO, is perhaps quite underrated for small businesses and freelancers as well. So, you could go after bookkeeper or graphic designer and then your town, your village, whatever, your county, start creating useful content on there. There's a whole host of content marketing advice, but also just SEO advice that you can follow that will start to lift your website. And it's never wasted anyway, because if somebody recommends you and then they go to find your website and they find all this useful information, they're going to be like, oh wow, this person knows what they're talking about. So
there's always that you might feel like you're not getting much engagement on your social media. I mean, we've posted on our social media for 4.5-5 years. Some of our posts will get 2-3 likes, but we've always found it as a kind of backboard to our reputation that anyone, whenever they look, can go see a very coherent everything looks very nice. It's all very pretty. You've got anything you could possibly want advice on. And over the years, we've built that up. So you might feel like your content doesn't look like it's that interesting to people, but you never know what client might be looking at it at a random time while they're laid in bed and want to come up as a client in the future. So I always think that kind of thing is good to build. And whilst you've got the time at the start, make the use of it, because at the point I'm at now, I haven't got time to put my finger in every single place and try and get involved in all the Facebook groups as much as I did at the start. And then kind of building blocks were so important.
Yeah, and it's good. Like, there's nothing more of putting really, is there? If you click through to a live, a link that you've been directed to through to Instagram or something from someone's website, and then they haven't posted on there for 6 years, and you're thinking, are they still in business? Or so yeah. I mean, that's the reason not to spread yourself too thin as well, isn't it? To kind of keep the channels that you are utilizing and showing off, like keeping them kind of to
up to date and everything.
At their best, yeah. Yeah.
Of course. So, Steve, have you got any examples of any interesting projects you're working on at the minute, or anything that's kind of going on in your life currently in business?
In business, well, I have a lot of people sort of come to me asking advice for like starting a podcast, and then eventually that might happen. So I've been working on in fact, speaking of accountancy and numbers, an interesting podcast to do with dyscalculia. Is that how you say it? It's like dyslexia for numbers. Okay. And that is just an independent podcaster wanting to make something. So I've helped them get set up right from the beginning all the way to giving advice of how to get it out there online. and editing that series. So now we're talking about series 2, talking to a vet's practice about, putting themselves forward as thought leaders in their space to kind of start creating content, and then hooking them up with other freelancers I know who can help dig into when you create a podcast, you basically create a gold mine of content that you can use in other ways.
You can clip it and put it across TikTok and Instagram Reels. I see it all the time. And funny enough, I'm actually not that much of a podcast listener, but I see a lot because I'm a big TikTok user and the Instagram Reels, so I see a lot, and it's always very interesting content. And that's what you're saying. I assume that you can clip bits out of it that are useful across your whole social media offering. So it's basically film once for half hour, an hour, and you've got content for a long time. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Repurpose it. And you can also, so if I was to make a podcast and then you end up watching it, Will, on TikTok, but I could also turn it into a blog post that maybe Sophie might want to read because she prefers to read something, so you can take that initial content and then filter it out into lots of different places. This is why I think podcasts work so well, not just for people who actually listening to them in the first place. So yeah, working on lots of bits for that. But I also work on one of my very first clients actually was a local company. I used to walk past their offices all the time with my son, and I wrote them an email and got lucky, I suppose, but I happened to send it at the right time, went in there, met them, and I've been making videos with them for 11 years now.
And they were your longest kind of standing clients.
Yeah, I think they would be. Yeah, and they are a much bigger company, so they work with international companies. So it would never come to me directly, but I get to work closely with their team, making scripting animations, doing all the sound design for the animations and things like that. So we're working on some of them as well.
Does that make the process difficult if you're working with kind of big businesses that are that kind of size that you've worked in for a long time, so maybe their requirements have changed over the last 11 years, versus working with kind of I'm assuming smaller, but it might not be, but the ones with the kind of dyslexia for numbers that you mentioned? Is it a kind of different environment? Or
it is a different, and it's I like the difference as well. Things when you work with smaller businesses, you tend to work faster. You're working with decision makers much, when you work with a big company, you can end up having somebody much higher up the level suddenly come in and go, oh, what were you guys making? Or you make something and you can never share it because it's hidden behind a wall because it's so commercially sensitive to them. It's teaching their teams, for example. So I love working with smaller businesses on stuff which is public facing that we can put out there. And, I've made videos for businesses where we've been teaching their line managers and stuff for years, but I'm never going to meet them. I'm never going to know the difference, even if they might tell me. Whereas if I'm working with a smaller company, I might get first-hand feedback on what they're doing, and
you see the impact from what you've done. Yeah, it's the same. I mean, we work with small businesses up to 4 mil turnover kind of level, but most of them are director owner managed, where it's literally them, maybe 1 employee, maybe 2 employees. We've got a few that are a few more, but most of the time it's that size business. You mentioned decision holders, which to me, I love working with people like that because I tell you, it is quicker. Our big thing is speed. A lot of the time they want a quick decision if it's they want to buy a new vehicle for their business. So it is very quick, but I appreciate what you're saying about it. It's nice working with them kind of people, I find.
Yeah. And this is why I also, though, like making my own podcasts and creating my own content as well, because I have complete control over that. I can also experiment with it and use techniques which I then take back into client work. It's like a living, breathing portfolio to show that I can do what I do, and I put it out there. And I realize that might be harder, for example, for accountants to do, but hopefully you can use your own clients as those examples to sort of show all the good stuff that you do. But yeah, that's why I like working on side projects, because it keeps
so you develop your kind of knowledge and build it into your main kind of offering. So that's what we've done. I mean, over the years, our product, our service as such, has changed, has developed, but our offering of that high value communication that people love has always been there. So have you found the way you've worked has changed over the years, since when you very first started to kind of being freelance to how you operate now, or have you kept the same kind of processes in place?
Oh, interesting. I mean, a lot of it is still very much it's still the same. I think often it's about, though, not becoming too wedded to a piece of software or a system of doing things, and being ready to explore new ones. So in the field I work in, a lot of people use Adobe software, for example, and I had been using that for, I don't know, 25 years or whatever. But I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, I started exploring up, maybe there's other audio software out there where I don't have to pay a subscription. Maybe I can pay it one off. So I started using different tools instead. And the same goes with video editing. And some people get really precious about using traditional video editing
Adobe.
software.
I don't know any video editors that don't go near Adobe. So this is interesting to hear.
Yeah. So then you start to realize that there are newer ones coming up, like Riverside, that we're using to put this out into the world. You can actually then repurpose what we're doing right now into much smaller clips really quickly within Riverside, instead of taking it out into an external program, or Descript, which is another sort of software as well. So I like experimenting with all of these different tools to try and find, especially as a company of one, to try and find quick, efficient but good ways, rather than just being wedded to the traditional ways of doing things. Which also means that you can end up being subscribed to lots of different pieces of software and stuff, running your own business. And it's good every year to sort of step back and think, do I still need that? Is there another tool that can replace that? Is Dropbox that I use now offering... in fact, here's a good example. I was paying for Zoom and I was paying for Google Workspace in order to have my email go through Google. And then I realized Google Meet, I was apparently already paying for it. Now, when Google Meet first came out, it was pretty ropey, but now it's brilliant. And so I was like, I feel a bit bad. Sorry, Zoom, but off you go. So, and it's things like that, like your software in itself can change, and maybe you don't need those duplications anymore.
Yeah, but it's about, obviously, it's keeping up to date on kind of industry standards and seeing what other people are doing. Again, circling back to networking events, I've come across great software just meeting people at networking events. We have a client who's actually a software developer, and he developed kind of it's almost like a little bit like Slack and Teams, but a co-space for kind of you to have your clients in there to speak at the same time. So you meet these kind of software people as well as that, which you can bring into what you offer to clients, and overall it just gives you a better package that you can offer. You mentioned Adobe. We've used Adobe since the very start. Adobe Sign, we found it's the best because you get everything else included. It's great. So it is about making sure your kind of software offering is what suits for your business. That's really interesting.
Yeah, like this year is the first year in forever since I left university where I don't have an Adobe subscription, where it's just gone. And it's not an anti-Adobe thing. It's just that other things have...
You found things that suit you better, which makes it's great that you've been able to do that. So no, I think that's
yeah,
really
for the moment, and maybe that'll change at some point, and I'll jump back into them. Yeah.
So Adobe needs to up their game.
I'm sure they're doing okay.
they're having a big board meeting at the moment. Oh, Steve Folland.
God, he's left. I think they had enough money out of me. They're doing all right.
I know Will's kind of already asked this, but I'm just going to drill down further. I think I got a bit obsessed. I was getting a bit obsessed asking everyone about this at the moment, which is quite telling. But when you have, client work and, non-client, I mean, already just having a freelance business, you have working on client work and working on the business and in the business. But then also you have all of these other projects as well. And they're big projects, like Being Freelance podcast, Being Freelance community. How do you time block? Do you have days like theme days? Do you, dedicate set timers or dedicate certain days to certain things, or do you jump around? You find you naturally jump around? What do you do? Or do you obsess about it for years and years and years like I do and spend most of your time thinking about how you're going to plan your time and not actually getting anything else done?
I'm a big fan of time blocking. I don't necessarily ever do it. But
yay, time blocking.
It really makes sense, doesn't it? What sensible people they are who I have great respect for people who create loads of content in one go and then manage to schedule it to go out. Far too often I think of something, I create it, and then I publish it sort of like within minutes kind of thing. It's so there's not necessarily a good habit at all. The way I managed to stay on top of keeping Being Freelance podcast going at all for 10 years has kind of been like treating it like a client. I think it's the same for doing it for the kids podcast, and in a way that's easier because I do it with Frankie. There's that accountability of having somebody else that you're working on it with. But you know, if you've decided that you're going to publish every Sunday, for example, then you know that you've got to have it edited by Saturday at the last, you know, and you've got to have a few guests pre-recorded so that you've got something to edit. So you just start to treat, if that was a client and you were paying yourself, you would have to sort of put it in your diary and make time because it's important to you to put it out. And so that's kind of how I've managed to stay on top of so many things. And then I just sort of show up in lots of different places because creating something is part of it, but promoting it is another part of it.
That. Yeah, I mean, because I find with the magazine, because obviously we publish quarterly, and you just have to do it, right? You have to make it, you have to get it to the printers. People are paying for it, like it's recurring payments, but they're kind of creating false deadlines, or you know, for the marketing of it and the promotion of things, or even yourself. Do you have like how do you do that? Do you have a process that you're like, right, well, these are the 3 things that I'm going to do when the podcast is ready to promote it? Or do you like set time aside for that as well?
I am just not checklist friendly enough. Again, sounds like a really good idea. But maybe there's a slight falsehood in there in that I have over time built up an idea, you know, like I'm going to start off on Instagram stories with this initial, you know, announcement that there's a new episode, and I've created templates within Canva or within Video to create GIFs and things, you know, like assets, I guess, that I can then use on different social media platforms in different sizes. And then a couple of days later, I will release a video with a clip from it, and then a couple of days after that, and so on. And I know I'm going to put out a post into the community, which in effect creates an email to everybody, and then I'll also create a community email and another email, and I'll put it on LinkedIn and so on and so forth. So I don't keep too much of a rigid structure to how I do it, but I think I have evolved templates in my own head and also literal ones on software to help me promote everything.
I think if you look at your content, your channels, you know, everything you do, it will blow your mind in terms of how good it is. And, you know, but I guess you've also worked towards that point over the years as well, haven't you, in terms of repurposing different things and, you know, getting more and more skilled and everything. So, and I suppose the thing is, like, when you're making something, when you're spending the time to create something like a podcast, like, and you're saying you can then generate the clips from it and things like that, but or, you know, even just putting it out there and announcing it's out, or, you know, you do the non-employee of the week awards like every Friday, so you're doing that, you have to do that every Friday. So that in itself is kind of putting yourself out there and marketing it, isn't it? Like, just by doing it.
Yeah. So
as long as you're telling people.
Yeah, the Non-Employee of the Week Awards were a live stream that I always did at 11 a.m. started off on Twitter live, and then it was Facebook live. And now it's within the community, which is its own private membership. And that's been going since 2018. So live on a Friday, giving out a prize to a freelancer. I think.
But then in turn, that freelancer is then going to share it on their social media channels, aren't they? So, you know,
it's funny. Often things that I end up doing to market Being Freelance or to market the community, you could probably create it like there was some big master plan behind it and it was all very clever. When in fact, I probably just had an idea to sort of,
like when you were in the bath or something.
well, literally, there was a Twitter conversation happening where somebody was moaning about how award ceremonies suck and they've been treated badly. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to start an award ceremony this time, next Friday. Be here. And I'm going to give the winner a trophy of a packet of biscuits. And suddenly it goes well and you're doing it several years later. So yeah, things can kind of, I think if you pay attention to what the conversations which are happening online and just joining in though, that's a good starting point. That's probably what I do a lot of the time.
Yeah, because I was gonna, really trying to drill down, but I'm gonna leave you alone now, because I was gonna ask in terms of, having the time to do different things, not only kind of making things and doing the client work, but marketing them, having these amazing creative ideas, I would say, and we kind of know that you need to leave a bit of room for that, don't you? In terms of, so I won't ask you because you've sort of, how you leave space for that, because you've told us how you do things. But would you like to tell us? I have my last phone photo is of you. I've already showed a photo of you, and I have it poised about your last kind of campaign to celebrate.
I don't know if
people can see this. Can you see that?
We've done, there's me in a tuxedo on a card. So we've done, lots of different things. And one of them, there you go, was, I guess, I'm going around in circles already, but what I tend to do is if something seems fun and I'm excited by the idea, then I tend to go after it. And if it's a bit silly and it's going to be talked about and stuff like that, then I suppose, and it's fun. And if I'm going to enjoy it, then I'm also likely to put the time into doing things. So that often is something which I go after as well. So the most recent thing was when the Being Freelance podcast turned 10, I decided, you can't celebrate without having cake. But cake is no fun by yourself, so I want to share it with everybody. And by everybody, of course, I picked those in the Being Freelance community. So I said I'm going to post cake to people in the Being Freelance community, which is what I've done. So last week, and you'd appreciate this, Will, as an accountant. My accountant's going to have to sign off on 140 slices of cake.
Why have you bought so much cake? Yeah, literally. And we probably would believe
marketing, baby.
So, I'd love to see the invoice.
Did you put a couple of extra in, just like,
don't tell me to my team. We'll get down to this.
You can't. No, he didn't.
Yeah, so it's been. It's just a feel good thing to do. Anyway, it feels good, and I could spend that money on Instagram adverts if I probably wanted to, but that would just give money to Meta, wouldn't it? Much better.
You've got to do the things that are you and build them kind of the habits that you've done across all, by the sounds of it, I don't know, 11, 12 years, whatever you've been doing, showing yourself as who you are, your personality, and doing them extra things rather than just ads. I like that.
Yeah, I think
it's such good advice just to enjoy it as well,
I think if you were to take a sort of, a more analytical marketing look at it, you'd think, okay, well, it's being talked about. It's being talked about in the initial phase where people are going, is he really doing that? And then it's being talked about when it's arrived through that, there's the anticipation of it arriving and people sharing photos and videos and stuff on Instagram and LinkedIn and probably on TikTok. If I was on there, I would have seen it there too. So it's, and then there's the genuine warmth. Like, I'm not doing it out of being cynical. I really do want to share that. I was gutted when there were some people who have been in the community for years who didn't fill in the form I needed them to fill in so I could send them cake. Because I saw that their name was missing. I was like, oh, you've got to have cake. I want to send it to you. So yes, it kind of like a trickle-down effect. And no doubt people will probably talk about it as well and mention it to people and things like that. And new people have joined because who doesn't like cake? So there's new people joining as a consequence just to get cake. And I kind of respect them for that blatant cake.
Well, it's about finding your tribe, isn't it? And that, that gives it sends out a clear vibe what the community is about. I mean,
yes.
Some may have said that it was about biscuits. How are biscuits feeling about this?
But when you celebrate, so for a very long time, I've given away biscuits and talked about biscuits. But biscuits are a day-to-day thing. But if you're celebrating, you don't go out and get a packet, but you get a cake. That's how you. I feel like
you've been asked this before, haven't you?
So that's why cake. But yeah, it's been a really nice thing to do, and so far it's good. And yesterday I put out an email about the fact that lots of people didn't fill in that form, even though I'd sent out 2 months worth of communications reminding them to fill in a form, which just goes to show that you have to keep talking about the thing. And this goes to
even
everybody.
If you're giving free cake.
Even if you're giving free cake, people still won't fill in the form in time, right? So,
I didn't fill in the form for the cake.
There you go. So Emma Louise would like a custard cream. Well, join the community and you might win biscuits, Emma Louise. Genuinely, it happens. But yeah, it's
so repetition.
That was my point. Yeah, thank you, Sophie. It's that thing that and this is important to all of us running a business, is that you have to keep saying the thing. So in this case, it was fill in the form, but in general, it's like, hi, I'm Steve and I make podcasts at its very most basic level. Or, hi, I'm Steve, I have a power hour to do this. Or so you have to keep saying it, because you feel like you're saying it too much and that everybody else is sick of it, but nobody is hearing that message as much as you. That's what so I do a Being Freelance email, which you can sign up for as well. Yeah, another thing I do.
I'm keeping on putting all the links in the chat, but I'm gonna put this one in as well.
Some of the things I want to look at, yeah.
But the message in that was the fact that, look, even if you're giving away cake, so if I can't get through to them with that, how is your message getting through? Nobody is hearing your message as much as you are. They're not sick of it like you are.
That's really good advice. Yeah, I like that. I've not heard someone say it, and that makes complete sense, because sometimes I feel like I'm drilling on about a certain piece of tax advice that I want every client to know, and it's definitely gone out to every client, but we're like, why are you not doing this? It's something like trivial benefits, which is, you might have heard of that in some way, but it's a great deal when it said tax. But not every client using it. I'm like, why would you not? And then, but like you say, maybe I feel like I'm saying it too much, but to them, they might have only seen it once and just need a little reminder. So yeah, that's really good advice. Really good.
Yeah. Trivial benefits is a good thing. Yeah.
Tell me about trivial benefits. Tell me about trivial benefits.
Oh, you want to know? Well, you can go look at our social media.
I'll put a link in the chat.
If you're a limited company, you could buy yourself a cake. Put it like that.
You literally can. Yeah. So yeah, £50 spend on yourself. You do it anyway. You can buy something for yourself 6 times a year as director. Great little way to save tax that you buy anyway. So yeah.
I got a bike. It wasn't £50, but you can buy a bike.
You can buy a bike. We've done a whole other post on that as well. Buying a bike for your limited company. Yeah, it's all them kind of things we love and try and get them out. But yeah, like I say, I might feel like I'm saying it too much, but to clients, it's really good to hear that kind of thing. So,
Oh, your Instagram is really nice, Will.
I love the fact you're straight on right now. How do I get my £50 thing?
Yes.
No, I was sharing it with the chat. I was sharing the link with the chat. Yeah, very nice. Oh God, I'm squished between two amazing content creators. I feel like I've got to up my game, and I think this is such good grace. I mean, grace. It's such good grace advice. My background is in marketing, and I think because of that, I overthink it so much, and I have because this is how I have to do things. I got obsessed in my head that I had to block a whole week out for marketing, and I kind of have managed to achieve that next week, which isn't feasible or sustainable going forwards, but I am going to kind of dedicate as much as I can next week to it. And I just think, coming back to doing things that you enjoy and that kind of excite you, because if you're not excited about it, if you're not excited about telling people about it, if you don't believe in yourself, you don't believe in your business, your services, the campaign that you're kind of running to promote yourself or, to help people, then people feel that energy, don't they? Like they feel whether you're excited about it or not. So I just think that, and and then you are inclined to repeat it as well, because it doesn't feel like, oh God, I have to say this again. I just think that, and we launched the magazine via Kickstarter and like crowdfunding, and God, did we kind of bang on about it for that month. I was sending like 50 tweets a day, and I'm never quite, obviously, I mean, that's not sustainable, certainly, but that kind of launch marketing, that excitement, and that's when you kind of, come up with a campaign like cake. You kind of get that launch excitement back again, don't you? That excitement from when you first start your business or you first go out there. You need to kind of like do things because that kind of, I think splitting things into campaigns is really helpful for that you're not just kind of feeling like you're slogging away the whole time. So
not just repetitive content, but being about what's true to yourself and having that passion. And if it genuinely is something you enjoy, then go for it. The big thing I was going to say as well, with a lot of the people that will be in the chat, if they're newly qualified accountants or at the start of their journey, the hardest part I always found, and when I speak to other colleagues in accountancy, is starting. So they get very scared with actually starting with content posting, or LinkedIn especially, which is one of my favorite platforms. But they say, oh, my friends might say I'm a bit weird because I put a LinkedIn post on there talking about whatever it is. But I'm like, I mean, I wouldn't find it weird. I find it really cool that you're expressing yourself, showing what you like to talk about. So I think if there's anyone that feels like that, just start, because you might, and if they are, they're jealous is what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Like, I sort of don't think twice about posting on LinkedIn now, but I certainly had those, that where it felt weird at first. And I think, my advice is always that if you are putting out something helpful, it doesn't feel weird, really. And yeah, your friends are not your target market. So, I think that becomes difficult sometimes. Like, when I first started writing newsletters kind of 10 years ago, and I just would kind of know that some mates were signed up, and I would kind of know that my parents were signed up, and you can't help kind of think about that in the back of your mind, and you start writing it for different people, and it just, that is a little bit disastrous, really.
I don't know. It's even like this last month. I looked after we'd finished, and in my group chat, one of my friends' group chat, they'd linked it in there. So look what Will's doing right now, and I was like, oh, this is work separate. But it was cool because they were actually, oh no, you came across really well. So I was like, oh, it was nice to see. So it was about, your friends probably don't, and your friends are going to be supportive. I said probably not the kind
of course, yeah, or get new friends, yeah, exactly. Absolutely, yeah. But I also think with the LinkedIn thing or the posting thing or doing things like, I always think like, your first 20 posts might feel weird, and you're never ever going to get past that, so you might as well just start posting and get those 20 out of the way.
Yeah, I can't remember I can't remember when I first started posting on LinkedIn. I have no clue what I spoke about. So I think with that, just go for it, because you will forget very quickly.
Yeah, and when you shared, Steve, didn't you, like in the article you were sharing kind of some old school branding for the podcast, and in a way you must look back at that and go, oh, that looks so old-fashioned now. But at the same time, it's what we came back to earlier, isn't it, about seeing how far you've come and what, how the achievements that you have evolved, and that, you've kept that love for it. So yeah, I think that's nice. We're coming nearly to the end. These fly by, don't they? They absolutely fly by. If anyone's got any other questions in the chat, then just pop one in. We've got like 1 minute left, but yeah, thanks to everyone who's been commenting. I don't think I was visible for the first 10 minutes, but I'm not sure. So sorry about that, but yeah, it was just a voice. I mean, I had it in my questions. We haven't actually officially covered it. Emma Louise has alluded to it, and she's also just seen on your LinkedIn, Steve, which I will put in the chat, that she's only down the road from you, so she's poised. But what is your favourite brisket?
What is my favourite brisket? Oh my god! Well, it depends what mood I'm in. Often a dark chocolate digestive. Yeah, when we go on holiday, I look forward to getting a packet of dark chocolate digestives to have with my cup of tea when I'm reading my book after walking the dog before everybody else is awake. Oh, I love that. And but also Fox's Crunch creams. I mean, but they're just so,
oof, yeah.
You have one and then you've inhaled a whole packet. They're dangerous. Whereas a dark chocolate digestive, I can only do a couple at a time.
Can only eat 7. That would be mine.
I still love a custard cream though. A crunch cream is a fancy custard cream, isn't it?
That's true. Yeah, Emma Louise is definitely. Yeah. She's in it for the custard creams. I've popped links to the Being Freelance community in the chat, into the subscribe to the amazing newsletter, for Will's Instagram, Realise Finance. I've just popped Steve's, Will's, myself's LinkedIn profiles, so please do jump on, connect with us, send us a message. And I think it's just all that's left for me to say. How do you think we did? All that's left for me to say is, how did we do, Steve?
You're absolute naturals. You don't talk over each other, but more than that, you bounce off each other with a nice, it feels conversational, which is a nice, that's what people then, that's the reason it's gone so quickly, right? Is because it doesn't feel like this question, that question, this question, awkward pause. And it is hard not to get awkward pauses when you're doing things online as well. It's easier when you're in the same room. So actually, top job.
Thank you. I think that was also a lot down to an amazing guest. So thank you so much for
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be chopping all these up and putting them all over social and putting them out in newsletters. And if you didn't catch all of it, you can catch up later. Thank you to everyone who has come and watched it live, though. And hope to see you next month. We've got Gus Bandel, who's going to come on and talk to us about. He's an absolute LinkedIn guru. So come along and check out us chatting to Gus, hopefully as naturally as it's been with Steve.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.